the first ever debate you hosted on this channel was with me. Do you remember that?
It was with Jim Goad. Oh my God.
Jim Goad. Yeah, man.
Memories.
Yeah. That was a tough debate because Jim had incredible technical problems the whole time. And it just, I've tried to listen to that back and it's like unlistenable, basically. It must have been very frustrating to watch along.
What was the debate about?
Is Jim Goad a white supremacist was the subject matter. And I would say I won. In my opinion.
Have you ever lost the debate?
No, I'm undefeated. I don't know how many actual debates I've done. I did a really early one a long time ago with LSP, who's a frequent guest here on Biden versus Bernie. This was extremely primary content, Democratic primary 2020 content. We did that. That was like a formal debate. I don't know how many other like actual debates I've done. Those are the big two that come to mind. And then I've done like shit streaming where you go on a live stream and you argue, you bants, you do the bants.
Yep. All right. Chat looks good on my end. Everything is good. Would you mind giving us an introduction to your channel and our debaters?
Is that Chud?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure, yeah. So thanks, TJump, appreciate that. So I'm Chud. I'm a lefty streamer and YouTuber. I talk about a lot of right-wing stuff, do a lot of reaction Andrew content, that sort of thing. Lots of fun, lots of memes. So search Chud on all good social media platforms. And I guess I'll throw it over back to you first, TJump. Do you want to introduce yourself to my viewers and we'll kind of go from there and then Logic Guy?
I'm TJump. I run a YouTube channel called TJump, and I usually debate professors and philosophers on topics about epistemology, ontology, existence of God, fine-tuning physics, that kind of stuff. I also have a big chair.
He's kind of low, Chud.
Yeah, I'm putting the volume up a little bit.
I can see if I can turn my gain button. Gain, testing. Should be a little bit better.
I think you've got quite a naturally kind of low voice, but yeah, you sound great now. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay, cool. Right. So yeah, Logic Guy, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone? Oh, sorry.
No problem. Yeah, I'm Logic Guy. My first name's Dan. I'm a noted Twitter shitposter and Dave Franco enthusiast, and I do a chat show on YouTube called Logic Guy After Dark.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we'll get into it. So we're debating on the existence of objective morality. I guess the best place for me to start, like I say, is I'll give you each 5 minutes to kind of lay out a case. Any preferences on who wants to go first or anything like that?
Well, I'm taking the affirmative, so I'll probably go first.
Sure, go ahead.
So yeah, I believe there is an objective morality, and what I mean by that is I think that there is a morality that is true, independent of human minds. If human minds never existed, there would still be a morality. And my basis for this is that I think morality seems to be something more than just an evolutionary process in the mind. So, for example, if it was just an evolutionary process, then we wouldn't expect that anything else in the universe would also have the ability to come to understand morality, but I think that's probably not the case. I think that if there are aliens or artificial intelligences, silicon-based life, they're all going to have some kind of understanding of morality, just like all different species seem to have some understanding of morality. And I think that's because morality is something out there that can be discovered by anything that has a sufficient amount of intelligence and resources. And my reasoning for this is that there seems to be clear patterns in moral development over time. Like when we have our moral intuitions that someone kills somebody and we say, that's bad. But as time goes on, we start to see new things as being bad. Like we've given LGBT rights, women's rights, voting rights, ending slavery. All these things have happened in a relatively short period of time, which means that's clearly not evolutionary because evolution doesn't happen that quickly. So there has to be something primed in our mind that we're relating these ideas of morality to outside of just evolution. And that would be confirmed, of course, if we could discover other aliens and they had a similar idea of morality. And if all the different aliens converged on some similar principle of morality, that would be good evidence that this principle is some objective thing, not just an opinion or a subjective intuition based on our evolutionary proclivities. And so I would make the prediction that if it is the case that there is some kind of universal principle, then we would see that our moral intuitions are going to shift in a very particular way, a prediction made by my model that if I'm correct, then in the future we're going to see things like rocks falling on people as immoral. It's not something we're supposed to feel intuitively agree with right now. It's a prediction about what moral intuitions are going to change in the future. And if that is correct, if we discover that that does happen in the future, that's good evidence that my understanding of morality is correct and that there is something out there that we are describing with these moral principles. And that thing that we're describing is a higher order emergent property in my model. A higher order emergent property is like fitness. Fitness is a objective feature of the world. So some animals survive in more environments than others, but it doesn't have any singular location. Like you can't identify fitness in the gut of a gibbon or whatever. So it's an abstract property in some sense, or it's a emergent property, meaning it's a combination of many different things that describes a relation between the organism and its environment. And I think morality is a similar kind of a thing where it's describing, instead of the interactions between the organism and the environment, I think it's describing the interaction between different agents in an environment. And again, I believe that there is a principle that can be objectively describe morality across everywhere in the universe. And I think it's going to be a common feature across all life that has a sufficient level of intelligence, which is why I believe it is objective and not just an evolutionary process.
Okay, fantastic. Well within time. Thank you very much. And Logic Guy, I throw it to you. You've got the same 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So my position is moral constructivism, or also called, I believe it's a synonym, or at least contained within non-cognitivism. So basically, I think that morality is something that human beings, I would say create, but I think even more to the point, it's something we do together with each other for the purpose. I think it's an evolutionary strategy for the purpose of coexisting. So, if you have like a really rudimentary sense of morality, like you can, I think what makes something a moral actor is an ability to detect and anticipate like emotional responses for others. So if I punch you, I can anticipate that you're going to respond negatively. You're either going to fight or run, right? So that's a really basic like moral principle. So if you have that, like an iguana, you can not have to fight every iguana you encounter. If you have a little bit more of a sophisticated one, like a wolf, like a hyena, you can form like intricate hierarchical communities for the purpose of hunting and increasing your chances of survival because there's more food. If you have a really developed one, then you can work together to create an internet and go on it to argue about moral constructivism versus moral objectivity online with your friends. So it's a survival strategy first and foremost. I think that Tom and I have a large agreement in that morality is primarily about the world we want to live in, the world we want to create for ourselves. I would say, and I think that he disagrees with me about this, I would say that moral principles are prescriptions to be on the path towards the world that we want to create. Am I just supposed to like lay out my case, or should I go into like arguments?
Well, you've got 3 minutes. Use it how you wish. I mean, laying out your case probably is the best thing, I'd say.
Okay, well, I think that summarizes moral constructivism like to my satisfaction. But I guess what I would say is beyond that, what does it mean for morality to be objective? What does it mean if a statement is objective? Well, I mean, the typical answer is that something is objective if its truth is not dependent on humans, if it exists outside of us, right? But I think we'd agree on that. But if we're going to be making moral statements, then what that means is that we must have a way of demonstrating that statement is true by the scientific method or something like that, right? Like a triangle has 180 degrees is a sound objective statement because we can measure triangles and demonstrate that to others. So is that a property of morality? And another property of something that's objective is that every single person in the world can believe something objective to be true and it can turn out that they were all wrong. And there are historical precedents for this. At one time in our history, almost everyone believed that the Earth was the center of the universe, and evidence came forward that just proved that every single person on Earth was wrong. So apply that to morality. Take a near universal statement like murdering people for personal enjoyment, murdering innocent people for personal enjoyment is bad. Almost everyone on Earth would agree with that. That's at least as widely held as geocentrism was at any point in history. What evidence could come forward that would convince you?
So just let you know, you've got a minute left. Okay, so you might want to start wrapping up.
Great. So what evidence could come forward that would convince you that is wrong? What would that evidence even look like? And that, I think, pondering that statement is how I came to moral constructivism, because I realized there is not evidence that you could present me that would convince me that suffering and misery are good, and that I would want to live in a world of suffering and misery and not want to live in a world of love and compassion. There's just not evidence, because it's ultimately a subjective value.
Okay, fantastic. So just open conversation now. I'll only interject where it's necessary. TJump, go ahead, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So if we discovered a alien form of life, like a silicon-based life that didn't evolve, that had morality, would that prove it's not evolutionary-based?
How similar would their morality have to be to ours in order to be evidence? Because even on the planet Earth, our morality is not uniform, and in fact, it changes all the time. So, like, when you say they have morality, what are we talking about?
Well, again, I think there is one fundamental principle that's going to describe all morality, that it's all moving in a single direction. So it would fit, like, if my model is correct, then based on their technological and intellectual capabilities, we can predict exactly where their moral spectrum is going to be relative to ours. It's probably going to be different. So, like, our morality seems to follow the moral progress, which is a specific pattern related to amount of resources and our ability to provide for people or desires without harming others. So depending on their amount of resources, then they would fall on that spectrum in a very particular way. So hypothetically, if we discovered an alien species that is silicon-based, non-evolutionary based, that did fall exactly where my model predicted they would fall, and that they're not evolution-based, and that would show that morality isn't purely evolutionary, right? Because they didn't get it from evolution, because they didn't evolve.
Well, let me ask you this. So we use our technology to discover a sentient alien race that is roughly in the equivalent of our Bronze Age, right? So do they believe, as humans believed at that time, that human life was the most superior form of life in the universe? Do the aliens believe that human beings are at the top of the moral hierarchy?
No, they would believe that they are.
Oh, so that sounds like a pretty big difference. If they believe that human beings were the equivalent, were at the top, that I might kind of consider to be evidence of moral objectivity. But since we don't have an alien race to point to, I would agree that would falsify.
I'm not following the argument there. So for something to be objective, all species would have to think humans are the greatest. Like that seems to be the exact opposite of objective. I don't know. I don't follow how your argument works.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood your argument. It sounds like you're saying that if the alien race reached the same moral conclusions as us, that would be evidence of morality being objective.
No, again, so when I say morality is objective, I think there is a principle that is greater than humans that applies to all life, and all intelligent species are going to be on this pattern of the objective pattern. So we're all developing our moral progress in line with each other, but we wouldn't have the exact same moral conclusions at the exact time, because obviously we have, like, different cultures have different levels of resources, so they have different conclusions relative to their amount of resources, and as they gain more resources, they all move together in the same kinds of conclusions, not based off of species. So, like, humans are starting to see that there's value in other sentient things like animals, because we have sufficient resources to survive without killing animals, and so we see value in animals. Veganism and vegetarianism are seen as the moral absolute. And the same thing would apply to other species, other alien species that reach the similar level of technological and resource availability would realize that, oh, other conscious agents, wherever, regardless of what they are, anywhere in the universe, would also have moral value. And so there's some point in our moral development when we have enough resources, we start to see significant value in all living things independent of ourselves. But it obviously starts with ourselves because it needs to.
Okay, but can you turn this into like what is a belief we could find among these aliens that would prove moral objectivity and falsify moral constructivism?
Well, my question was if it's evolutionary based, and they're not evolutionary based, and that proves out morality isn't evolutionary based. Because if they have morality, and if it maps onto my model of morality, and they have it, then what I'm calling morality isn't based on evolution. This is prior to the question of constructivism or not. This is just showing that it's clearly not evolutionary based, because they didn't come from evolution.
So this is a hypothetical alien race that didn't evolve.
Yeah.
Okay, well then that would definitely prove that morality is not that there's at least, it would prove there's a form of morality that's not evolutionary based. Absolutely.
Right. And so that would mean, and since I think that is highly likely, it seems very highly likely that if there was an alien race, I think even artificial intelligences, once we get them, will develop a moral system, regardless of any evolutionary traits whatsoever. It seems to me that any evolution or any species of any kind in the universe are all going to develop some kind of moral system, which, if true, like obviously I can't prove that because we don't have any examples of alien species, but if true, that would be very good evidence that morality is independent of evolution.
I mean, it's obviously based on this gigantic what if, but I think I have to somewhat revise my my statement, because I do think that our evolution, our morality is evolutionary, but I also kind of gave a definition for a moral actor, and I said that if you have the ability to recognize and anticipate emotional responses in other beings, then you're at least on some stage of a moral actor. So based on that definition, and we could expand the definition, maybe it's lacking, but that definition doesn't require you to be an evolutionary being. It opens the door, at least, for non-evolutionary morality.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. That's sure.
Okay. All right. Am I supposed to ask you a question now?
Sure. Yeah, go for it. Go.
Okay. So I've had I kind of have an advantage here in that I've watched some of your debates on this subject. I heard of you because you debated Destiny on Modern Day Debates, and your argument since I believe that morality, the objective morality, would have to be demonstrated in some way, you kind of built your body of evidence for objective morality on moral intuitions. Would that be a fair statement?
Well, in science, every hypothesis starts with some kind of phenomenon, and then you build the hypothesis based on the phenomenon. So the moral intuitions and moral progress are the phenomenon that I'm using to build my hypothesis.
Okay, that seems like a especially poor starting point for proving something is objective. The definition, which I used in my opening statement.
Let me jump in there for a second. On. So I'm not using moral intuition to prove it's correct. That's the phenomenon. So like if we're standing in the middle of a desert and we see an ocean off in the distance, like obviously us seeing the ocean doesn't prove it's there. That's just the phenomenon. We're saying, well, we see it, but is it really there or is it not there? We don't know, but we have to start with that phenomenon and then try to make predictions about what's going to happen as we get closer to it. What are the properties of the ocean going to be as we see it more clearly? Those are the things that would prove the ocean really being there or being a hallucination. But the moral intuition is just that we see the ocean. It's the phenomenon we're experiencing, which then would need to be explained by greater detail. Obviously, the fact that we have moral intuition isn't itself proof of objective morality.
So moral intuition is not itself sufficient to prove the existence of morality.
Right. It's the phenomenon.
Okay, so I agree with that. So then, if I like, what's the demonstration of morality? If I, like, you have built a case where choice is the like the peak moral value, and the best moral universe is the one where people have unlimited choice. So if I were to just be like, nah, choice doesn't matter, I don't care, what would be the demonstration that I would be wrong?
I would be making testable predictions about how our moral intuitions are going to change in a very specific pattern in the future. And if I can make those predictions with high accuracy, then that would be good evidence that my understanding is better than your understanding, if you can't make the same predictions.
Okay, I agree that being able to make correct predictions is an important principle in demonstrating the objectivity of something. So, like, what would be a moral prediction that you might make hypothetically?
Well, the one that I go with often is that in the future we will see rocks as falling on people as immoral. I try to pick something that's unique that no other model predicts to make my model stand out and say, like, if we get this one right, that means my model is correct because no one else is predicting this. So it's a pretty substantially accurate prediction.
That would definitely be a unique prediction. I will agree with you. I will go so far as to say I would be impressed if you, do you have a timetable for that?
Not exactly. No, I'd have to do the, like, actually try to figure out how the resources work in relative to. What I'd say is that once we get to the point where there's very little or significantly less humans harming other humans, then we will begin to see nature harming humans as morally significant. So it's like, once we have sufficient resources to prevent or avoid any kind of agent on agent immorality, the term morality won't simply disappear. It'll transition into meaning things that are any involuntary imposition of will, like a rock falling on somebody. So it's specifically whenever we have the technological capability to stop a large portion of agent on agent immorality, then that term will encompass and expand to mean non-conscious things like rocks.
This is sort of that's an interesting answer. This is sort of a tangent, but I actually can almost see like precursors to that already. For instance, moral, usually in the realm of racist arguments, again, arguments that climate change is racist because it disproportionately affects certain people. That those seem to me like precursors to what you're talking about. That's an interesting prediction, and I would be very impressed if you got it right. But I have to say, I'm not sure that you proved that you proved morality. I think that what you might be proving there is human behavior, that human beings will react to X in Y such a way, and human behavior is something that we absolutely can test objectively.
I'm not sure what you mean there. So I don't know of any human behavioral model that makes that kind of a prediction. That would be a strange kind of a prediction to make just based off of human behavior. But
I mean, it is a strange prediction.
Sure. That's kind of the point. So it's like saying that, well, we could make the same predictions of general relativity based off of some kind of non-bendy space-time model. I mean, yeah, but his model was first, which is why his is the best. So if you have a model that is able to make substantially significant predictions that no other model makes, then it's reasonable to conclude that your model is correct, even though there's always going to be other models that could post hoc make the same predictions. That wouldn't be evidence for those other models because they weren't the ones that actually made the predictions.
So in one of the debates that I've seen from you, I think it was it was on Adam Friended's channel, and the guy, I forget the guy's name, was like Ask Me Anything or something like that. You said that
Ask yourself. Yeah,
that was probably it. You mentioned like plotting moral intuitions on a graph, and you're saying that if that graph actually shows the movement of morality over time, then the graph is right, and that proves that morality is objective. But I remember thinking that like that's just plotting what people think. It doesn't actually give any prescriptive power. It just says, oh, here's what's popular, and then here's what's popular. And if my positions fell in the bad quadrant of the the unpopular quadrant of the graph, I would just be like, well, that doesn't prove I'm wrong. It just proves that I'm smarter than everyone else because I came up with answers that they couldn't think of. I wouldn't find it persuasive at all.
I'm not following exactly what you're saying here. So like the predictions of, again, general and special relativity, like we could say that, that doesn't prove we're not in the matrix. That doesn't prove that gravity isn't real. Because it can be explained by other things. Like, I mean, obviously you can't prove anything with absolute certainty, but the way in science we say one hypothesis is better than
what
the
I'm
others.
saying, what I'm saying is that in your example to, again, I forget his name, I'm sorry. But on that show, it sounds like you were graphing opinions, which, yeah, you can put opinions on a graph, but how does that help us? How does opinions being on a graph prove their objectivity or their subjectivity? Either way, it seems like it doesn't.
Well, again, that's just the phenomenon. So our opinions are the phenomenon, and the evidence is if I can accurately predict the changes in our opinions across time, that would be the evidence, not the opinions themselves.
Okay.
So it's kind of like scientists predict that when we walk closer to the ocean we see off in the distance, we'll see it turn blue, or we'll see it start to shrink or whatever. Like, obviously our experience itself doesn't matter. Like, no one cares about that. What cares is that their ability to have a hypothesis and use that to predict what we're going to see in the future is the evidence, not literally what we're seeing.
But maybe this is a different scenario that doesn't apply. But if I came up with a system to predict, political beliefs, and I said, oh, based on what's going on, I expect that this fringe political party will gain prominence and become the dominant political party in America over the next 50 years. That's a really impressive prediction, but I wouldn't feel like you predicted that political party was right. I would just say that you predicted how people were going to behave and vote.
Right. You'd have to like tie that into some like reason. You'd have to say there's some law of nature or whatever that causes this to occur. And then
even if I did that, even if I said, well, based on what I know about human nature, there's going to be a water shortage, and that's going to result in a rise in, I don't know, like really especially belligerent nationalism. Okay, well, that's a good prediction, but you didn't tell me that belligerent nationalism is the correct political opinion. You just predicted that people would gravitate towards it.
Right. So the correct thing here, I think, is the word that you're getting caught up on. Like, to say that it's correct would mean like to say it corresponds to reality. So you'd have to argue that there is something in reality to correspond to, like I'm doing. I'm saying that there is a property, a higher order emergent property like fitness that is there, and our feelings correspond to that, which is what makes it correct. You'd have to make a similar analogy in your case. You'd have to say like there is a higher order emergent property in nature that corresponds to political beliefs of some kind. And if there is this kind of higher order emergent property, you can then use it to make predictions about who's going to come into power or whatever based on some kind of pattern in this thing that you're saying exists. And if you can do that accurately and predict novel things that no one else can predict, then yeah, I think that would be evidence of whatever you're arguing for. Like, just like Einstein said, space-time can bend, doesn't matter how ridiculous that sounds. If you can make testable predictions, you have evidence, if they're right.
Okay. Is there are there any other lines of evidence? Like, can you like measure morality in any sense?
Like if I could measure it today, I'd have a Nobel Prize. So obviously not. It's purely just hypothetical, and the best I can do is make predictions. If I had like real empirical evidence, I'd be a millionaire with a Nobel Prize right now. So obviously not.
Right. What would that look like? Like, what would a mechanism to, like, hypothetical mechanism to measure morality look like?
What would a mechanism to measure fitness look like?
So what we would measure is things like lifespan, like increasing your length of life increases, you get less sick, your blood pressure goes down, things of that nature.
Well, what I think you're describing is things that we attribute to fitness. I don't think we're measuring fitness itself. Like, that's not a measure of true fitness. Fitness is, again, just description of an organism's ability to survive in environments? Like, is that itself a property? Can you just measure the fitness thing itself? Like, well no, it's an emergent property.
I guess we measure it by measuring things associated with it. Yeah, so I guess I agree. It's an emergent property. So we would measure morality by measuring
involuntary
like
impositions
outcomes,
of will.
basically.
Yeah, I'd say involuntary impositions of will or assistances of will, those kinds of things.
Yeah, but I think the difference there is that fitness, I don't think, is making an objective statement. It's not saying you should be fit or you shouldn't be fit. It's just
in my model.
Here are your
in my model, like, the shoulds aren't in my model. Like I'm a moral realist, a moral naturalist. So the shoulds aren't in there. They're just, morality is a descriptive statement. It's a law like any other law of nature. The should thing is just something we impart onto it that's irrelevant. Shoulds don't even mean anything in morality, so it's just incoherent as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, this is something you said during your debate with Destiny that honestly kind of confused me, and I think I've sort of wrapped my head around it. But when you say, I think of morality, I think of moral statements as ought statements, but you have a different view of this. You say that ought statements are you don't think of morality as ought statements. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think of morality as a feeling. So when we see someone killing someone for fun, we have a feeling that that's wrong, and that feeling is morality. Like, inherently, whatever that feeling is morality. We don't get to define it and say, that's ought statements are that feeling. Like, no, that's not how it works. Morality is a phenomenon that we're trying to explain. You don't get to define. You can take that phenomenon and then also add your theory that describes that phenomenon, which is the oughts. The ought says, I have a feeling it's wrong to kill people for fun, and I believe that's because you ought not to do it. That is your feelings of morality plus your theory, but the theory is irrelevant here. Like, the only thing you need for a model of morality is to explain the feelings. The oughtness is not relevant to an actual theory of morality. It's just a property of some people's versions.
Yeah, I had a hard time wrapping my head around this, but I think I understand. Like, I like insofar as like math or engineer, like physical principles are not ought statements. They're describing things, but we write manuals about how to build a bridge, and those are the oughts. So you define morality as, I guess, the underpinning forces, and then the oughts are an extra layer on top of that.
Yeah, something
do I have that right?
That we add on, just like I think it's exactly like fitness, is that there's a description of a hypothetically best, most fit animal, which is one that could survive in any environment. There's nowhere in that statement that has any oughts, and I think morality is the same thing. It's a higher order emergent property that describes the greatest possible interaction between agents, which I would describe as the best of all possible worlds, where there's no involuntary imposition of will, which would be like the most fit animal. But nowhere in there is there an ought, and I don't think you need one. I don't think oughts are relevant.
Well, okay. So like that ought layer on top of morality, like what would you call it? Like, what's the name of that?
A human description, a human interpretation of morality, our feelings towards morality.
Okay. All right. Fair enough, I guess. So one of the implications of moral statements being objectively true is that we should not vote on things that are objectively true, right?
America disagrees with you, but yes.
Okay, yeah, it maybe not always a popular view, but it doesn't make sense to do that, right? But I mean, our electoral process really does come down to moral beliefs, right? Like there's not a political policy that you could name that doesn't intersect with morality in some way. Like these are moral principles. So it seems like a necessary result of believing that morals are objective is like, this is not a belief compatible with democracy. We shouldn't have democracy. What we should do is we should have scientists figure out the right thing and do that.
Well, yeah, I think that there is an objective truth to morality, just like there's an objective truth to science, and every one of our policies should conform to the truth in both respects. I think scientists should essentially make all the decisions, or predominantly, about our direction that we should go in. Of course, politics has a pragmatic aspect to it because one of the biggest aspects of politics is what can motivate people to continue building the society. And so you have to make people happy in order to keep the society going, regardless of whether or not it's true.
Well, wait, but wouldn't doing the morally correct thing all the time make people happy?
No.
It wouldn't? So doing the morally correct thing all the time would result in human misery?
Yes. So, like, for example, if someone tries to kill you, the moral thing to do is to turn the other cheek. But that's obviously not going to make the victims very happy. So because there are limitations in our world that some people's happiness are going to cause other people misery due to the physical limitations of our reality, giving people happiness and always doing the moral thing isn't always the best thing to do. Sometimes going to war and killing lots of people.
But it is in the grand scheme of things, though, right? Like on the long trail, isn't morality the thing that benefits the most amount of people the most amount of the time?
No.
No. So we could all work together to make the best of all possible worlds, and we could be miserable?
No. So again, the conclusion that the thing that's moral is what helps the most amount of people, it means that, like, killing one person to save 5 is moral. I'd say that's wrong. I'd say no. I'd say morality is saving all 6 of them. So it's immoral to kill 1 to save 5.
But
it's just
but
more
if
immoral to kill
the
5.
options, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I
Go ahead.
That's
fine.
I apologize. But if the options before us are in fact save 1 people or save 5, don't we have to decide which of those is the morally superior one? Or the answer is that we don't do anything.
No,
doesn't that result in the 5 people dying?
No, we decide the pragmatic solution, not the moral solution. So there's a difference between our subjective morality of what the best we can do given our limitations, which isn't the objectively moral thing to do, which is the best that we could do if we were essentially all-powerful gods or whatever. So, like, given the trolley problem, trolley coming down the tracks, there's 2 tracks, one with 1 guy, one with 5 guys. Should you flip the switch to make it hit the 1 guy instead of the 5 guys? Well, it's not moral to flip the switch. You're still killing a guy. It's still immoral to flip the switch. But it's subjectively moral in that it's the best that you can do given your limitations. Now, obviously, we can know it's not the objectively moral thing to do because there's a more moral option. Like, if you were all-powerful and you could just Hercules stop the train, that would save all 6 lives. So that would be the moral thing, the objectively moral thing to do. But since you don't have the power to do that, your subjective limitations mean that we're not talking about objective morality when we're asking what is your pragmatic choice. We're talking about your subjective morality, what you subjectively can do. And so those are 2 separate things.
I feel like you just opened a can of worms here, because what you just, first of all, your appeal to subjective morality, which I would call constructivist morality, is the position I'm arguing for, sort of gives away the story, because you just conceded that if you're a moral objectivist, if you believe in moral objectivity, a cognitivist, you actually still end up relying on morally subjective principles, but that your system, the objective moral system, that's just something for God to do. So if God were here, he would do the right thing. But us people, we've got to figure out the pragmatic thing given the options available. But that's what morality is. That's what we're arguing about. We're arguing about what is the thing for us to do in the situation we're in. Your thing is just completely hypothetical.
So if we're talking about an objective morality, we need a standard that applies to all possible worlds, something that's true independent of minds. If it's only true... Wait. If it's only true in our context, in our world, that is by definition subjective. Like, that's just a stupid definition that will never qualify as objective morality, because you're only asking what is our subjective choices, which is inherently going to be subjective. So if you're talking about an objective morality, you're not talking about what's pragmatic for us. You need to filter that out. You need to know what is the best thing that can be done in the situation by any being ever, and compare our possible actions to that to know what the objective standard is. Like, the objective morality isn't the best we can do. That's clearly subjective. The best we as individuals can subjectively do clearly can't be the objective standard.
So I disagree that that objective statements are true in all worlds and not just this one, because when I make statements about physics, I am just talking about this world. I don't know about other universes. I don't know. I assume they probably do have different laws of physics. I am talking about the world I'm in now and what I can measure. The other worlds are completely hypothetical, so who knows what's going on in that?
I think you might have misunderstood what I meant by objective there. So if we're saying there is a standard that applies objectively independent of humans, and that would mean that that standard can't be measured relative to humans, right? Because if it's objective in the fact that it's independent of humans, if you're measuring it dependently on humans, those are literally opposite statements. Those are contradictions.
Right. Yeah. Which is why my statement, why my belief is what it is. So yeah, I agree with that.
So in my view, objective morality is something we have to find some standard that would be true independent of humans, and then try to see where do our actions fall on the spectrum of that independent standard. So we have a subjective.
Would it have to be true in all possible worlds? Because that's
just a philosophical term, so that's irrelevant. I'm trying to explain it in more detail here.
Okay.
If there is an objective morality true independent of humans, then that standard has to be, again, true independent of humans. So it cannot be based off of the subjective pragmatic limitations of humans if it does mean objective. If it is objective. And so I say there is an objective morality. There is a principle that applies to all beings, if you want to say in all possible worlds or the universe or whatever, doesn't make a difference. But
all beings is better. I like all beings better.
That's fine. So if you want to say that is the case, which is what I'm arguing, then if I based that on human morality, and I said the best pragmatic thing for you to do is the objective moral standard, obviously that's going to be a contradiction, which is why I say, well, no, that's incorrect. There is an objective standard. And then once we know the objective standard, we can compare our actions to it to try and get as close as possible. We obviously can't get to we're not godly powerful, so we can't do the perfectly moral thing, the objectively moral thing. The best we can do is our limited action, our subjectively moral thing, the best we can do given our physical limitations. But that isn't the objective moral thing. So there's a pragmatic thing, which is our subjective morality, and then there's an objective thing, which is the true morality. And what we can do given our limitations is just our subjective pragmatic decision, which is trying to get as close as possible to the objective standard given our limitations.
So the objective moral thing is not actually something people can do, at least in the trolley problem.
Yet. So there obviously are cases where you can do it. So for example, if I want help mowing my lawn or whatever, and you say, I'll help you mow your lawn, that's the most moral thing you can do. You've helped me achieve my desire. You've done the most moral thing you can do. But there's obviously cases where that's not the case. Like you have to
a lot of cases.
Yeah, like sure. So the fact
involving people dying.
Yes. So there's limitations. We have pragmatic limitations, and we obviously can't do the perfectly moral thing. Just like,
in which case we throw away the objective morality and we open up the moral constructivism to actually solve our real problems in life.
No. So we can't do mathematical equations to like the 100 billionth digit or whatever. Does that mean we throw away objective math and just do subjective math? No, it's still there.
No, but we actually okay, but in the case of morality, in a lot of cases the moral truth is not even known to us. Like you admitted, you couldn't actually measure it. So in a lot of cases, the true morality is just like I said in my opening. It's a black box. It's something that that you believe theoretically exists, but
I think
we don't actually know anything.
I think we can know it exactly. It's any involuntary imposition of will is immoral. The objectively moral thing is where there is no involuntary imposition of will. That is the objectively moral thing.
How did you determine that without being able to measure it? How did you determine that that's the most important moral principle?
That's the conclusion based off of my hypothesis. We say if we look at the evidence of moral intuition and moral progress, this is what I believe it to be. If my testable predictions are correct, then that is good evidence that model is correct. But that's irrelevant to your question. So your question is can we know?
No, it's not irrelevant. It's not irrelevant to my question.
Well, no. So
because if it's purely hypothetical and there's no experimental or empirical data to support it, then I'm right. You're just in a black box. You're just guessing, essentially.
No. So again, that's irrelevant to the question. The question is what can we know the objectively moral thing to do in the trolley problem? Like if I'm right, yes, we can know the objectively moral thing to do in the trolley problem, even though we can't do it. So our inability to do the objectively moral thing doesn't mean we can't know what it is. Like we can know what a perfect triangle is, even though it's impossible for us to draw a perfect triangle. Our knowledge, we don't need to be able to do it to know the hypothetical perfection of the the extension of the model. You don't; those are two separate things. So your original example, like I was saying, well, because we have to tie it back into pragmatic morality, it's irrelevant to whether or not there could be an objective morality. Those are two separate questions.
I've asked you a lot of questions. So I've been on the offense for a long time. So if there's anything you want to ask me.
Well, no, I'm happy with what I asked you before, as long as if you're willing to grant that that non-evolutionary based life forms outside of humans can develop a morality, and that would be good evidence that it's independent of evolution. That's pretty much all I need. Yeah, I'm happy to grant that, because I'm sure in the future we're going to discover exactly that, which is really all I need for my model. As long as I'm right about the predictions.
But I didn't concede though that it would be an objective morality. We're talking about a black box here. I don't know what the aliens are up to, but I would probably be inclined to say that the aliens developed their own subjective morality, which might have overlap with ours, which might be similar, but I would also expect to see significant differences. I mean, we sort of have a model for this in our own history. A lot of human civilizations developed independent of one another, and in fact, they agree on a few big things and then disagree on a lot of things. And I think that they agree because they have a common starting point.
Right.
And if the aliens in question are sentient beings, then I would expect them to form a moral system that put sentient beings at the top.
Right. That's why
that would make sense.
Yeah, that would just be some kind of evidence that it's independent of evolution. So the additional evidence would be if my testable predictions were correct, as you said, like, yeah, that would be really impressive if you got that right, because it's a very strange prediction. I think that counts as evidence for my model, even if it isn't proof. Like, obviously, you can't prove anything.
Wait. What would count as evidence for your model? The fact that would prove you right, or doing the prediction and getting it right would actually be evidence?
Doing the prediction, like that. When we see rocks as falling on people as immoral, and if other alien species got to the same point and they also saw rocks as falling on people as immoral, and this pattern that I've defined was consistent across conscious beings, and that prediction I made was correct, that would be good evidence that my model is correct, even if it's not proof.
If I predicted that bubblegum ice cream would be far and away the most popular flavor of ice cream in the future, would that prove that bubblegum ice cream is objectively the best ice cream?
No, not if. But if you said there is some law of nature that makes this the case, and then can use that to make predictions and get those predictions correct where no one else can, that's good evidence of your model.
And what is the law of nature in this case?
In my case, it's a higher order emergent property, like fitness, that there is a moral higher order emergent property.
Okay. Now, if I were to say that there's a what was the word you used? Natural. I don't want to use a different term. Natural order, natural law. Did you say?
Sure. Yeah. Law of nature.
Okay. So yeah, law of nature. That's it. So if I were to say that like gravity is a law of nature, what I would mean is that I can test it, I can measure it, and it acts uniformly throughout the universe. Do you have a basis for saying that that morality is testable and measurable and acts uniformly throughout the universe?
With the exact same level that we can measure and test fitness, yes.
Okay, I would not say that fitness is an objective is an objective statement, but
you don't think it's objectively true that some animals survive in more environments than others?
Do I think it's objectively true that some animals? I think that sounds okay. I maybe have to run it through my head a little bit, but that sounds unobjectionable on the face of it. But I guess that gives us a way to measure it. Like we can measure survivability. We can take a microorganism and put it in different environments and test to see which one survives longer. So that there seems to be a measurability to it.
Yeah, so I would say the same thing. We could just measure the interactions between agents and see which ones have the more involuntary position of will, just like we can measure the interactions between animals in their environment to see which ones survive longer. So I'd say it's the same level of measurability. Because it's a higher order emergent property, you obviously can't measure the thing itself directly, but you can measure corollaries that would be a consequence of it being existing.
So we can. You're saying that we can objectively measure the imposition of will by one being on another. That's an objective thing we can measure.
Sure.
That might be true, but then you're saying that is objectively bad imposing your will on another thing, and I don't know what the
No,
basis for
no.
that.
Again, the bad thing isn't there. Remember, in the fitness, it's not saying being unfit is bad. Nowhere is the good, bad. Those things are not in it. It's just saying more fit is the one that survives more, and I'm saying that more moral is the one with the least imposition of will. So I'm saying they're exactly corollary. The example of fitness and the example of morality as higher order emergent properties are a 1-to-1 parallel. So there's the oughtness thing.
So
remember,
I would
no oughtness thing.
So I didn't use the word ought. I will retract the word bad and I'll replace it with immoral. So the less moral system is the one with more imposition of one's will on another.
Yeah.
Is the less moral. But I don't see any basis for saying that is an objective value. What if I just say yeah, it's great. It's great having other people impose your will on it is great. What's the test? What's the demonstration that I'm wrong?
Well, how is that any different from saying that the less fit animal is the one that survives in the most environments? Like you could say that, but the property is there.
Because
so like there's a pattern
but
to the amount of environments an animal can live in, and whether you want to label that moral or immoral, the pattern is still going to be there, and there's still going to be one that survives in all environments and some that don't survive in any environments. And that pattern, regardless of what labels you use, is going to be there, and there's extremes on both ends. And so those extremes and that pattern is objective, regardless of the labels you use.
It just seems like you're doing one more move in the moral example. In the fitness example, we're just saying fitness is the ability to survive in the most number of environments. Now, someone else could come along and be like, no, fitness is about your ability to run a 5K. And you're like, that's not how I'm defining it. I'm defining it this way, and we're going to measure this, and it's subjective. Okay, that's good enough. But in the moral stance, you're measuring imposition of will. You're measuring a free choice. And you're saying, and this is the peak moral value of the universe. I don't see any basis for that second claim.
I'm not following what you're saying. So, like, when you're saying fitness,
I'm basically saying you're committing a tautology in the moral.
No. So your example of fitness doesn't make sense here. So it's not like we're just describing. We're not like giving a definition that's arbitrary and just made up that applies to nothing. There is an actual pattern in the universe, and we're giving the label fitness to that pattern, obviously, but there is a objective pattern there in the universe. And so I'm saying there is an objective pattern there in morality, and we're labeling that moral and immoral, obviously. Like, you could just change the definition, but then it just wouldn't be applying to the thing we're talking about. But because there is a thing there in the universe, independent of our definitions, it doesn't matter what you label it as, the reason it's objective is because it's there independently of us. That's the point. So just like fitness is there, and you could obviously just call it not fitness or call something else fitness. That feature in reality is still going to be there regardless of how you change the term or make the term to anything else. Doesn't matter what you do with the term. That thing, the fact that organisms are going to survive in more environments, that fact is going to be true regardless of any labels you use. And I say the same thing is true of morality. The fact that it's going to be the case that there are positive and negative interactions between wills is going to be there regardless of which words you use or how you change the words. The words just don't matter to the conversation. I'm saying there's a real thing there.
Okay. It seems like what was I going to say? So I think I get what you're saying, which I'm not saying I agree with it, but I think I understand your position, which is that there is a quality called choice, and this is something that we can measure throughout the universe, at least among like sentient beings. We can measure the ability to make choices freely, and that this is an objective metric. Do I have that part right so far?
Sure.
Okay. And then you're calling this metric morality.
Sort of. So I'm saying that we have these feelings that thing is immoral over there. We see that person killing that person, something about this. We have this feeling it's bad. What is that feeling? Well, that feeling seems to correspond to the subjective property you just described.
Okay, but then you also believe that morality is about morality is the behavior that you do that creates the world where everyone can make free choices all the time.
That would be trying to maximize morality. Yes.
Okay, but you have said that which is more like the moral thing to do is the thing that that results in that best of all possible worlds.
Yeah, because it's like the moral thing is the best of all possible worlds.
I think that's the point where we disagree.
Which
I think that's the point where we disagree.
I'm not sure.
I have no problem with measuring, the ability to make choices. I can think of ways in which that could be measurable.
Could you clarify the point in which we disagree? Because I think what you just brought up is just my use of language, saying it's the moral thing to do, just means that it moves us closer to the best of all possible worlds. It's not like there's any moral particle generated by that. I don't know. I don't understand the distinction there.
Right. So basically, you're putting a label on the ability to make choice, and you're calling that morality, right?
Well, I think that's what morality refers to. So there's a feature. Okay,
I don't know
of the world.
that's a common use of the term morality. I think like if you ask people what is morality, a lot of people might say like, how what it means to live a good life, and like should you tell a lie? But what if it saves Anne Frank? Should you tell a lie then? I think people would give an answer like that.
Right. So
I don't think
the term morality is two things. It is one, it's the feelings. Like I see someone killing someone, I feel that's bad. Mm-hmm. That is the essence of morality. And then when people use the term morality, they take that in combination with their own preferred theory. So they take those two things of the feelings plus their preferred theory, and they combine them together, and that's what the word morality means. Now, obviously, I disagree with their theory. I agree with their feelings, and I just have a different theory. So the fact that their theory differs from my theory is irrelevant to the topic. Like as you mentioned earlier, everyone could have a theory about the world being flat and they'd just be wrong. I mean, the fact that they have a particular definition entailed in their theory isn't really relevant. I don't know. I don't understand how you're tying that in.
How I'm what? How I'm.
How that relates to the disagreement thing that you're mentioning? Like you think that their preferred theory is correct or something? I don't get it.
I just think that you're using a specialized non-normative use of the term morality.
Sure, I admit that. Well, sort of, because normativity can be applied without us.
And that within this framework that you've laid out, which I think you've actually gone a good way to convincing me might be internally consistent and sound, but that even within this, you still have to use the type of morality I'm talking about to actually navigate the world.
Yeah, sure. I just label that as a pragmatic, subjective morality, and then they say there's the objective. We
sort of synthesized our positions here, then.
Sure.
Okay. Chad, do we want to take questions?
Yeah, we'll spend like 10 minutes taking questions. I mean, if anyone in chat's got any questions, feel free to shoot them this way, and then we'll call it a day, I think.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to make any final points before we move to questions?
I like cheese.
No.
You like cheese?
If there's time and like questions don't come in, I maybe have a few questions about his best of all possible worlds that we can interrogate. But if questions coming in,
we said an hour and we're at an hour now, so I don't want to I want to respect everyone's time basically. So
absolutely. Yeah. I didn't realize it was an hour. I didn't look at the clock, so I didn't realize it was an hour when I said that.
No, it's all good. No, don't worry about it. It's fun. But yeah,
that was I mean, how many times you see a debate where it ends in a handshake and we've synthesized the positions, everyone wins. This is incredible. What a great day for debate bros.
Well,
I think everyone should be rejoicing right now.
I'll give that a 50-50 because if we were just screaming and yelling at each other, we'd get like 10 times as many views. So it's kind of like there's a trade-off there.
Tom is here to rain on my parade. God damn you. Yeah, I'm sorry we didn't give the audience what they came for. I'm sure everyone tuned out. Yeah. My apologies.
No, don't worry about it. I mean, some debates are like blood sports. Some are a bit more, cerebral. So it's still good.
when we were talking about Jim Goad earlier, I was thinking in the back of my mind, I had a joke that was like, so we debated if Jim Goad was a white supremacist, and based on TJump's haircut, he probably is too. But I decided that was in poor taste to start off. I decided against it. My apologies, everyone.
You're just jealous of the hair.
Okay, so any questions, anyone? Like, just ask any questions you got. I think people are just chatting about the stuff.
This is too big brained for the audience.
I got a
They're
question
not,
from my chat. Marty Mad Scientist asks, question for both. Does community outcome figure into personal morality measures?
Yeah,
Yes.
heavily in mine, because I think morality is largely a strategy about how we coexist with others. So yeah, I would heavily say it does.
Yeah, I would agree too. Personal morality measures are mostly determined by your community in a lot of ways. It takes a lot to change your personal morality to shift from the community, which is why veganism isn't as popular as it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, yeah, I'd agree with that. You just have to look at different societies and cultures and stuff to see how that impacts and how morality differs around the world, right? Like, it's on the meat eating example. We would eat a cow quite happily in over here, but the idea of eating, a horse is disgusting. But then in other countries, they'll happily eat a horse. So even along the lines of meat eating, the morality can differ very greatly depending on what community you're in.
Now, Chud, since you're in it now, do you want to argue the third way for moral nihilism, which I know that you're a personal advocate of?
Wait, no, I'm not an advocate. No, I'm not an advocate.
He believes in God. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I think about it all, to be honest.
Sure, yeah.
It's all a bit big brain for me, to be honest. Just be excellent to each other. Okay, that's my take on all of this, I think. Okay, so I've got one question for you, Logic Guy. Are you aware of the embedding problem for non-cognitivists?
No, I'm not aware of the embedding problem for non-cognitivists. TJump, you are a philosophy professor. Do you know what that is and would like to explain it?
No, it's too hard.
No more questions from the audience. I'm storming off. This is bullshit.
Is killing babies wrong?
I would say yes.
So non-cognitivism is the position that moral statements don't have truth value. So that
right. So I'm not answering in a factual statement. I'm saying that I think that killing babies is wrong.
So it's not true that killing babies is wrong.
It's not right. It's not true. I'm saying it's a moral ought that I agree with and endorse, and I'm going to enforce on you because fuck you.
Okay, so I mean, if you endorse it, but it's not true, how does that work out?
Well, there are a lot of things that I prefer, but don't necessarily claim that they are objectively true. It seems to me like this is like a weird line of questioning that comes up a lot, because it seems like we impose our preferences on each other pretty regularly, actually. Because I want to stop you from killing babies. Why? Because I don't want to live in a world of baby killing. I want to live in a world free from baby killing. So that's my justification for imposing my will on you in that case.
Well, that's how it starts. Like, I don't remember how the problem actually goes in detail, but that's kind of how it starts.
Okay, I'll look it up. I will look up the embedded moral problem within cognitivism.
Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, the embedding problem should be the first thing that pops up.
Okay, great. And I will Google that and then pay you absolutely no mind question answer, because I'm annoyed by you challenging me in the chat. How dare you? Only praise from now on, please. I don't want to be challenged again.
No worries. Any questions?
Wait. What was the name of that person so I can block them on all social media?
I think it was Shapiness that asked that.
Great. So. Yeah. Consider yourself blocked, reported. I tagged the FBI.
Well, one problem you've got is everyone's got different names across different platforms, so it gets a bit confusing sometimes. But yeah,
you're gonna ban the wrong guy on Twitter. It's like, who is this guy who just banned me for no reason? What did I do?
Yep, that's right, and fuck that guy.
Someone's okay. This is quite a simple one. Is TJump a streamer? So TJump, do you want to answer that?
Yes, I grow potatoes on my channel. You can check out my YouTube channel where I just videotape the potatoes growing for like 8 hours at a time. It's fantastic.
Okay, cool. Well,
no one wants to know if I'm a streamer. No one's asking, is Logic Guy a streamer?
Listen, I think the question is, when are you going to become a streamer? That's what everyone's wanting to know.
Oh. Yeah, I actually don't plan on becoming a streamer anytime soon, unfortunately. Okay. In fact, I'm barely keeping up with my chat show, so I'm certainly not accepting more responsibility on top of that. By the way, I'm going to plug my chat show. I have an extremely contentious guest who I record an episode with. It's going to come out soon. It's none other than Peter Solar, Twitter gadfly, recently slandered by Glenn Greenwald, and we're going to talk about the controversy and his storied career. So everyone listen to that on Logic Guy After Dark. I'm plugging myself. I'm shilling.
Okay, cool.
Check out my potatoes. They're more interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've done the shilling. Is there any other points or anything else anyone wants to say before we end this?
Thanks for
just a
inviting
lovely
me on.
conversation.
Yeah, thanks for Logic Guy. Enjoyed talking with you. It was very pleasant. No screaming, unfortunately.
Well, look, TJump, if you want to have a screaming match with someone, maybe we can arrange that another time. I don't know. We'll see. But
oh yeah, definitely. I'd love to do more political stuff too. Eventually, there's not many people to debate politics with.
Oh, if you want to debate politics, I've got a long list of people that will happily debate you. So yeah, let's sort something out. Anyway, listen, thanks very much for coming on to both of you. Go and check out Logic Guy After Dark. There's an episode with me on there, and his latest episode as well.
Great episode. Yeah, great episode with you.
Go and check out TJump stuff as well for you into potatoes. That seems like a good thing. And thanks very much for coming on today. I really appreciate it, and I'll hopefully speak to you both soon. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Chud. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Logic Guy. See you guys later.